alumnus speak to us here today as we celebrate the new graduates of this glorious institution. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Marsha Caddle.
Principal Wade and the distinguished platform panel, distinguished friends all, class of 2022, good evening. Now, I was just saying to your chairman, perspective is everything, yeah? Because when I was here, this hall looked so big to me. And as I was watching some of the graduates come up to make their interventions, I was thinking how long that walk felt when I was graduating, and how large everything seemed at that time. And Dr. Aline, you'll remember, I think that's Ms. Burke as well that I see in the audience. Dr. Aline had the misfortune of teaching me Geoffrey Chaucer. I hope that y'all, for your sake, that y'all are not still doing that, are you? For English? Okay, that's good. But when I saw the topic for today, the theme that you as graduates chose and asked all of us to consider here this evening, I realized that it held both a message and a challenge. It was both a report to us, in a way, on the last 2 years of your lives as students, and also an acknowledgement that the world is now a very different space in which to live and to work and to succeed. A virtual space. Now, the truth is that the world is always, in every moment of our lives, a different place. But I'll come back to that idea in a moment. But the idea in this theme is that you, as students, were in a way forced to thrive in an online environment, but that this is not over, and that we will all be required to find success in an environment that is increasingly virtual. Now, I suppose that this evening, my only reflections on the characterization that I've just given you is that you were already there in that virtual space. We, as older adults, like to talk as if students, especially at your secondary level, took on this brave new world that was foisted upon you. But in fact, that was already your world. And while virtual learning changed a lot of your social dynamics, while it required more and different things of your teachers and parents and coaches and of you, while it called for different resources to be applied in new ways, you all might agree that much of your lives was already happening in online platforms and in virtual spaces. I know a lot of mine does, and I am slightly older than you. I pay for things using my phone. I see my doctor in another country via a clinical exam app. I share my work via Twitter and IG, and people reach out to me via any online platform that they can find. In fact, when my phone actually rings, I wonder what that sound is, because I really haven't heard it ring in years. So yes, we are already in a future of increased application of artificial intelligence, of technologies, of virtual and augmented reality and the metaverse and digital currencies. We are already there. We are already in a future where everything we thought we knew about work has changed. We thought that it happened in a fixed place, that it was time spent that mattered rather than value delivered, that employees were takers of wages at whatever level they were set. Those are the things that we believed about the way the world worked. Now we see that with the right technological infrastructure, work can happen anywhere. And now we know, or at least I hope we know, that you can sit in an office or on a construction site for 8 daytime hours and produce nothing. Or you can sit in a music studio overnight for 4 hours and produce one of the next Spotify top 10 songs. Now we've seen what we've now come to call the Great Resignation. Workers who have been furloughed or fired during the pandemic, who had a chance to reassess their own value to their organizations, and came out on the other side realizing that that value was higher than it was reflected in their wages, in their benefits, and in the general level of care that they felt they were receiving in the workplace. And so for weeks or months after companies were ready to reopen, they couldn't find anyone to rehire. Because people started to place value on different things and in different places. They started to better appreciate the value of their own well-being and their own creativity and their own innovation, the value of living life more on their own terms. And the world had to listen. And the world had to learn the lessons that this period was trying to teach us. But here's the thing I want to tell you this afternoon. We already knew all of this. This is what I mean when I say that the world is always, in every moment of our lives, a different place than it was before. It always is. One series of events is always leading to another, leading to a change. And somewhere, someone is already doing as a way of life the things that we think are completely new. And I'll give you a small example. When I worked with United Nations Development Program, we had, this was several years ago, we had flexi time. We had work from home arrangements. I had a single device that was connected to a network that allowed me to work from anywhere in the world. And when I was working from home, no one knew how many hours I was working. They didn't know whether it was during the day or whether it was at night. They didn't know if I went in town during the day and only started work at 9 o'clock at night. They didn't know because it didn't matter. What mattered was the quality, was the value of what I was delivering. I'll also tell you that when I was interviewed for that job at UNDP, I had blue hair in the interview. I had my hair shaven at the sides like this, and the top of it was blue. And the hiring manager, who interviewed me at the time, saw it, but never once mentioned it, because she felt that a team leader who felt comfortable in her environment was likely to be more productive, who felt comfortable expressing herself was likely to contribute more to the organization. And she was right. Now, before teachers and parents start protesting and writing to the principal and asking what type of loose stock is this on the platform during the HC graduation ceremony, encouraging children to have blue hair, that is not what I am getting at. We all have to be discerning, and we all have to have a sense of place. That's something that we all learn. We all have to appreciate that, regrettably, not every environment we seek to affect through our work and through our presence will be ready for our revolution. Sometimes, and this is something that I have learned especially over the last few years, sometimes it is better to slip in quietly and evolve changes from the inside than to yell incessantly from the outside with no one listening. And often, to slip in quietly, we have to speak the language of those whom we would seek to change. So I'm not saying that you should go and have blue hair and then go for your job interview. What I am saying is that more and more, the world is realizing that we have been measuring the wrong things, that we have been valuing the wrong things, and that there is a place for disruption. So what does that mean for you as you move on, and for the rest of us whose comfort you will hopefully disrupt? If I read the theme, I believe that I am meant to point out to you that innovation is the future. And what I take from that when we talk about virtually, what I take from that is really the place of innovation. Innovation is the future, though, not just in tech or in AI, or in crypto, or in NFTs. Alan Emptage graduated from Harrison College in 1983 and developed the world's first search engine. Carlton Cummins, a Barbadian who went to UE, assembles recyclable batteries for sustainable global access to energy. And I'm sure that you all know of other design and tech examples. But there's also innovation in sport for you as an athlete, or in the studio or with your instrument for you as a musician. Dwayne Bravo perfected in cricket what some call the off-cutter as a bowler. This is where a fast bowler delivers a slower ball to a batsman who is expecting a fast one. And so that the ball, for those of you who watch cricket, which I still do, rally around the West Indies, so the ball would arrive later, and if you do it right, it would clip the top of the stumps at just the right moment. Now, that is the perfection of technique, or that is the innovation of technique in sport. And so there's always a place for innovation. But the question is, how does innovation happen? And where does it come from? And we've been complaining, not just in Barbados, but throughout the region for some time, that we feel that we have an innovation deficit. Well, innovation comes from making space. When we talk about teaching in schools for innovation, it does not just mean teaching a subject called innovation with a capital I, or teaching entrepreneurship, or STEM, or robotics, which are all fine things to teach. But teaching for innovation means making space for imagination, and for mistakes, and for thinking. Making space for thinking and for reflection, and not drowning out your brains every waking moment with constant information and the capacity or the necessity to recall. It means making space to be inspired and to get off the treadmill and think about what your community really needs and what part of what your community needs you can create, you can execute, you can deliver. And I'm not talking just as a job or as a career, because you may not deliver it as a part of your job, but I'm talking about as your contribution to being on this planet in this moment. 6 months ago, I was successful in my second general election. And all my colleagues who were asked to return to cabinet did return to cabinet. I was asked, and I did not. And this is a personal story for all of you who are getting nervous. It's not at all a political story. But one of the reasons I did not return, as everyone would think one should, has to do with what I just said. That we have to think about what our community needs and about what part of that you are best placed to create and then contribute. Now, when we look around today, we might feel that we are living in the apocalypse. I love horror films, but I especially love zombie apocalypse movies. I don't know if there's anybody else who feels the same way. Now, I used to train very hard as a dancer and then as a footballer. And finally, when I was away at school, I used to do competitive obstacle courses. And I always would tell people I'm training to survive the zombie apocalypse, and that I was going to be ready. Well, I don't see any zombies yet, but I would not blame anyone for thinking that the apocalypse is already here. We have multi-year pandemics, we have wars, we have famine and drought, and the world is literally overheating and in many places actually on fire as we speak. Now, in many ways, the world is not following any particular direction when it comes to changing the course of the climate crisis. Some of the countries that are major polluters are now finding every way that they can to renege on the commitments that they made to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They are worried that their major companies are going to lose value because those companies have invested so much in infrastructure that is related to fossil fuels. So they're not sure how to find the finance to stop the loss and the damage in countries like ours that are the most affected. So I said to some of these representatives from other countries, major polluters, I said, okay, so you're not sure, and that's the reason for your inaction. Well, I have some ideas on how you can do that. And I'm going to spend some time on helping to come up with some of the answers that are going to mean the difference between my country and my region being flattened by stronger and more intense hurricanes, or my country being able to survive for your generations and for the next generation. So that is what, in this moment, I chose to do. Innovation happens when we make space, but it also happens when we take up space, when we take up our space wherever you work, wherever you live, in your country, in your region, in the world. It happens when we understand who we are and who we want to be, not just as individuals, but as a community, as a culture, as a nation. That is innovation, the creating constantly of who we are and who we want to be. Now, I don't know how you feel about Barbados being a republic and being fully self-governing. And I won't get to have that conversation with you today and hear how you feel. But I will tell you that I feel that this country is in one of the most open spaces it has ever been for innovation. It is in a place where you get to help create a Barbadian identity while being citizens of the world. It is in a place where you get to say what you feel that a Barbados that is a republic should have, perhaps, as our national dress, or what you feel that a Barbados that is a republic should mean when we talk about elegantly casual or semi-formal or formal. Should it look like how it has always looked to us growing up in a post-colonial way? Or should it look some way that you define, some way that we all help define as people who live in the tropics, in a Caribbean country, where it is warm, and where many of us have descended from the continent of Africa? This is also innovation. Deciding who you should be and how we evolve our society in a way that makes sense to us. How we develop a sense of appropriateness that is actually in keeping with our culture, so that when we talk about etiquette, it is not just the superficial expression of wearing pearls and wearing gloves and pouring tea, but it is an expression of appropriateness that allows us to be ourselves. So that when you go somewhere and you are called on to act in a particular way, you do that without having to leave at home the person that you are. So what is that sense of being ourselves that we get to create? Innovation is not just about tech. It's not just about virtual space. It's not just about the future of work. It's about becoming every day who we would be. I want to end in perhaps a very cliched and predictable place. We all saw recently that Bill Gates was looking to get off the billionaires list. And I use Bill Gates, who's not someone at all that I reference much, because of the topic today, and because we are talking about innovation and creation in the tech space and what the future will look like. Now, the reason that Bill Gates, who's acquired all his billions from tech and from innovation, is looking to get off the billionaires list is because he said, I will move down and eventually off the list of the world's richest people. I have an obligation to return my resources to society in ways that have the greatest impact for reducing suffering and improving lives. I want to say to you this evening that I'm not calling on you to be the most altruistic and to return your billions to society, although we hope that you do. But what I'm calling on you to recognize is that we show up as our whole selves everywhere we go. If you become a nail tech, you're not just going to be a nail tech. You're going to be perhaps a parent, perhaps somebody who works as a volunteer, perhaps somebody who plays a sport, perhaps somebody who loves zombie films. We show up as our whole selves. And so you get to bring whoever you innovate yourself to be to whatever space you go to. So as we reflect on this issue of the future and virtually thriving and what thriving in that future looks like, I just want to remind you this evening that this idea of creating yourself is not just about creating a career, creating a profession. It's about however you express the values that are meaningful to you, however you help develop those values as part of your community and as part of your country. I don't know many of you, but as I stand here, I feel tremendously proud of what you've been able to accomplish over the last 2 years, over the last 7 years. I hope that you keep many of these friendships with you, many of these relationships that have held you up, that they continue to hold you up, because we need more and more to be able to hold each other up. It's been wonderful talking with you this evening. Thank you.